You shock your pool every week, or every 2 weeks when you forget, or every time the water goes off, which is more often than it should be. You buy the bags, you add them in, probably in the afternoon, because that is when you notice the problem, and the water improves for a few days before the cycle starts again. Shocking has become a fixture of your summer routine, a recurring cost, an accepted inconvenience. What if the reason you need to shock so often is not the pool? 1. What if it is one specific chemistry condition that has been running uncorrected all summer, quietly consuming your chlorine, driving your pH out of the effective range, and creating the exact conditions that make weekly shocking feel necessary? And what if fixing that condition cost under $10 and eliminated the need for most of your shock treatments permanently? The chemical is sodium tetraborate, borax laundry aisle, $4 to $7 a box. It is not a sanitizer, it is not a shock replacement. 1. And the title of this video is deliberately provocative because no single compound eliminates every need for shocking forever. But what borax does, correctly understood, correctly dosed, correctly maintained, is remove the primary chemistry condition that forces pool owners into the weekly shock cycle in the first place. Fix that condition and most shock treatments become unnecessary. Not all, most. That distinction matters, and this video will be honest about it. 1. Before the method, you need to understand exactly what borax does, what it cannot do, the mistake that makes it backfire, and who should not add it without checking a specific number first. All of that comes before a single dose recommendation. Why you are shocking so often, the real cause most owners never find. Shocking is a response to two conditions: combined chlorine buildup from reacting chlorine with swimmer waste, sunscreen, and organic load. 1. And chlorine that has dropped low enough from UV destruction or pH-driven inefficiency that the pool needs a large dose to recover its sanitizing capacity. Both conditions have the same root cause in most residential pools: pH instability. And pH instability has its own root cause: inadequate alkalinity buffering combined with nothing in the water to resist the daily pH climb that aeration, swimmers, and heat produce. Here is the mechanism in plain language. 1. Every time someone swims in your pool, every time the jets run, every time the waterfall operates or a cannonball happens, carbon dioxide is driven out of the water. That drives pH upward. On a typical summer afternoon with active pool use, pH can climb from 7.5 in the morning to 7.9 or 8.0 by mid-afternoon without anyone noticing. At pH 8, free chlorine loses roughly 75% of its sanitizing power. The chlorine is still there. The strip still shows a number. 1, but 3/4 of it is sitting in the water as hypochlorite ion, the inactive form, rather than hypochlorous acid, the form that actually kills bacteria and oxidizes organic compounds. Organic compounds that chlorine would have oxidized at correct pH sit in the water instead. They accumulate, they react with the remaining active chlorine and form chloramines, combined chlorine, the spent irritating byproduct that causes eye burn, skin irritation, and that harsh chemical smell. 1. By Saturday, the pool has accumulated a week of this, and the owner shocks to burn off the chloramines and restore free chlorine. By the following Thursday, the same cycle has run again. Shocking becomes weekly. The borax buffer system interrupts this cycle at its source, not by adding more chlorine, not by preventing organic load from entering the water, by holding pH in the range where chlorine works correctly all day, so the organic load gets oxidized as it enters, rather than accumulating and forming chloramines. One less accumulation means less combined chlorine means less frequent shocking needed to burn it off. That is the mechanism. That is why borax reduces shock frequency, and that is why it is not a shock replacement. It is a condition fixer that makes the conditions requiring shock less likely to develop. What borax does in pool water? The 3 functions that matter. Function 1, pH buffering. When dissolved at 30 to 50 parts per million in pool water, borax creates a borate buffer system that resists the upward pH push from aeration. The buffer does not make pH immovable. It makes the drift slower and smaller. A pool that previously climbed from 7.5 to 8.0 by mid-afternoon may now reach 7.7 under the same conditions. That 0.3 unit difference is not cosmetic. It represents a significant improvement in chlorine effectiveness throughout the day. Function 2, reduced chloramine formation. Because chlorine is working more effectively at the pH the buffer maintains. Organic compounds entering the water get oxidized more quickly, and completely faster oxidation means less accumulation of the nitrogen compounds that react with chlorine to form chloramines. One less chloramine formation means the pool smells better, feels more comfortable to swim in, and requires less corrective shocking to burn off accumulated combined chlorine. Function 3, possible algae growth inhibition. Research suggests boron compounds interfere with photosynthesis in algae cells at the concentrations created by the borate system. This is a supporting effect, not a guarantee, and not a replacement for chlorine as the primary algae control. 1. In a pool with correct free chlorine and stable pH. Borates may make it harder for algae to establish the foothold it needs to become a visible problem. What borax does not do: sanitize, clear a green pool, fix high CYA, compensate for low chlorine, replace filtration, or eliminate every shock situation. A pool after a party with 10 swimmers still benefits from a dusk shock to oxidize the accumulated organic load. A pool that is dropped to near zero chlorine during a hot stretch still needs corrective dosing. Borax changes the frequency of these events. It does not eliminate the category. 1. The number to check before adding a single ounce. No exceptions. Total alkalinity. Test it with a drop kit before adding borax and before making any decision about whether the borate system will work in your pool. Here is why this check is non-negotiable. Borax raises pH when you add it. A full initial dose of borax, 20 pounds per 10,000 gallons, raises pH by approximately 0.5 units. If your alkalinity is adequate at 80 to 120 ppm, this pH rise is manageable and correctable with muriatic acid in the next step of the setup. 1. If your alkalinity is below 60 ppm, the pH correction is less predictable, and the borate buffer you are trying to create will not hold as effectively because the alkalinity foundation it needs does not exist. The correct pre-borax sequence. Test alkalinity, correct it to 80 to 120 ppm with baking soda if needed. Confirm it is stable over 24 hours, then add borax. This sequence takes an extra day or two but produces a borate system that holds pH correctly all summer rather than one that establishes on a shaky foundation and requires constant intervention. Also check pH before adding borax. 1. If pH is already above 7.6, bring it down with muriatic acid first. Adding borax to a pool running at pH 7.9 pushes it to 8.4 or higher before the buffer establishes. Chlorine becomes functionally inactive at those levels, and the setup process produces a week of poor water quality before the chemistry stabilizes. And check CYA while you have the test kit out. If CYA is above 70 ppm, the chlorine lock condition is already limiting your pool's chemistry effectiveness more than anything borax can address. Fix CYA through partial dilution first. Run drain 25 to 30%. Refill. Retest. Confirm CYA is below 60 ppm before establishing the borate system. Adding borax to a pool with 90 ppm CYA improves pH stability in a pool where chlorine is still largely inactive. The priority in that pool is CYA, not borates. 3 pre-checks: alkalinity, pH, CYA, 5 minutes. They determine whether the setup produces the results described in this video or creates a week of chemistry corrections before things improve. The exact setup method, every step in sequence. This is the practical core. Every step matters. The sequence matters. No step can be skipped without affecting the outcome. Step 1. Test all 4 numbers. Free chlorine, pH, total alkalinity, cyanuric acid. Write them down. Make decisions based on actual readings, not visual estimates of the water condition. Step 2. Correct alkalinity if below 80 ppm. Grocery store baking soda at $1 per pound. For a 10,000-gallon pool, 1.5 pounds raises alkalinity by 10 ppm. Add in 2 stages, half first, run pump 2 hours, retest, add remainder if still needed. Target 100 to 110 ppm for maximum buffering capacity. 1. Wait until alkalinity has been stable for 24 hours before proceeding to the borax addition. Step 3. Correct pH to 7.4 to 7.6 if out of range. Muriatic acid from the hardware store if high, washing soda from the laundry aisle if low. Add slowly in stages, with the pump running and protective equipment on. Wait 2 hours and retest between additions. Confirm pH is stable before step 4. Step 4. Calculate the borax dose for your pool. To establish borates at 50 ppm from 0 in a 10,000 gallon pool, add 20 pounds of borax. For 15,000 gallons, 30 pounds. For 20,000 gallons, 40 pounds. 1. For pools where you have used borax before or where any borate level exists from previous seasons. Test with a borate strip first and calculate only the additional amount needed to reach 50 ppm. Step 5. Add borax with the pump running. Walk the perimeter of the pool and broadcast it evenly across the surface. Do not dump it all in one corner. For doses above 15 pounds, split across 2 consecutive days rather than adding everything at once. Borax fully dissolves within a few hours of normal pump operation at summer water temperatures. Step 6. 2 hours after the borax addition, test pH. 1. It will have risen, expected and planned for. Add muriatic acid diluted in a bucket of pool water to bring pH back to 7.4 to 7.6. Dilute acid into water, never water into acid. Add at the deep end with the pump running. Add in stages with testing between. Do not overshoot below 7.0. Step 7. Test the following morning. The borate system takes 12 to 24 hours to fully stabilize throughout the water volume. The morning reading is the true stabilized baseline. If pH is in range and a borate strip confirms 30 to 50 ppm, the system is established. 1. If pH has shifted slightly overnight, make a small correction and retest the following morning. Most setups stabilize within 36 hours. The 3 mistakes that make borax fail or backfire. Mistake 1. Adding borax before fixing alkalinity. This is the setup error that produces owners who try borax, have a week of chemistry problems, conclude it does not work, and go back to the pool store. The borate buffer works correctly when alkalinity provides a stable foundation beneath it. 1. Without that foundation, the pH correction after borax is inconsistent, and the buffer does not hold at the intended pH level. Fix alkalinity first. Every time. It takes an extra 24 hours. It is not optional. Mistake 2. Exceeding 50 ppm borates. Above this level, foaming becomes a real issue in pools with waterfalls, jets, or active swimmers. The foam is harmless but persistent and alarming to guests. The buffering benefit does not increase significantly above 50 ppm, and the aesthetic problem is not worth the marginal chemistry gain. Use a borate test strip before adding mid-season top-ups. 1. If the reading is still above 30 ppm, do not add more. Let dilution from normal pool operation bring the level down naturally before adding more. Mistake 3. Using borax as a substitute for chlorine management. This is the misunderstanding the title of this video might create, and the reason the honest version of the promise is fewer shock treatments rather than never shock again. A pool with correct borates but inadequate free chlorine, a dirty filter, and no daily testing will still develop problems. The borax system reduces the conditions that require shocking. It does not eliminate the need for chlorine, testing, filtration, and circulation. Pool owners who establish borates and then relax all other maintenance habits see temporary improvement followed by a return to the same problems. Now, before the shock reduction protocol, if you want the complete system in a printable reference, the Pool Carter Playbook, from green to crystal clear 39 pages. Complete grocery store method with exact doses for every pool size, the full slam process, the weekly routine, and the 5 numbers that run your pool all season. Normally $67, right now $29.99. 1 7-day money-back guarantee. Instant PDF download link below this video. The shock situations borax reduces and the ones it does not. Understanding which shock situations the borate system prevents and which ones it does not is what separates realistic expectations from disappointment. Here are the specific scenarios. Shock situations borax helps prevent. The midweek shock from accumulated combined chlorine. This is the most common shock situation in residential pools, and the one most directly addressed by the borate system. 1. Combined chlorine accumulates when chlorine is working at reduced effectiveness due to high pH. pH-driven chlorine inefficiency allows organic compounds to accumulate faster than chlorine can oxidize them. They form chloramines. The pool needs shocking to burn them off. The borax buffer that holds pH in the effective range reduces the rate at which this accumulation occurs. Many owners who previously shocked every week find they only need to shock after heavy use events once the borate system is running. The emergency shock from a sudden chlorine crash. 1. Freight climbing above 8. Co-liming can make free chlorine effectively inactive within hours. Owners who test in the morning see 3 ppm and then find the pool visibly off by the following morning are often experiencing this exact scenario. pH climbed through the day, chlorine became inactive, organic load accumulated overnight, and by morning, the pool is in recovery mode. The borax buffer that resists the afternoon pH climb prevents this chain of events from initiating. The pre-weekend shock because the pool always looks worse on Fridays. This pattern is almost always pH-driven. 1 Monday through Thursday. Swimmers use the pool, pH climbs, chlorine efficiency drops through the week, and by Friday the accumulated effect is visible. The owner shocks Friday evening to prepare for the weekend. With the borate system holding pH steadier through the week, this predictable Friday deterioration is reduced or eliminated for many pools. Shock situations borax does not prevent. The post-party shock after heavy bather load. 10 people in the pool on Saturday afternoon introduce significant organic load regardless of how stable the pH is. 1. That load needs to be oxidized, and a dusk shock after a heavy use day is correct maintenance, regardless of whether borates are established. The difference is that the shock needed is smaller, 1 to 1.5 times the standard dose rather than 2 to 3 times, because the organic accumulation is less advanced due to the pH stability. The recovery shock after neglect. A pool left without attention for a week in August heat will need a slam regardless of borates. 1. The buffer slows deterioration but does not stop it when chlorine has dropped to near zero and warm water has given algae the conditions it needs. The slam process for a green pool is unchanged by the presence of borates. The shock after a confirmed combined chlorine problem. If combined chlorine tests above 1 ppm, a breakpoint chlorination shock is required regardless of the borate level. The buffer reduces the frequency of reaching this point. It does not eliminate the corrective requirement when it is reached. Knowing these distinctions sets the correct expectation. 1. The borate system is not a shock elimination program. It is a frequency reduction system that targets the most common causes of unnecessary shocking. Owners who understand this use it correctly and get consistent results. Owners who expect total shock elimination are setting themselves up for disappointment. The combined system, borax plus the daily habit, that actually eliminates most shock events. Borax alone reduces shock frequency. 1 borax combined with a daily 2-minute morning test reduces it dramatically, to the point where many pool owners go entire months without needing to shock outside of deliberate post-heavy use events. Here is why the combination is more powerful than either element alone. The borax buffer holds pH steady between corrections. The daily morning test catches the days when pH has still drifted despite the buffer. Heavy rain, large chemical additions, extended party use before that drift has had time to produce combined chlorine accumulation. 1A pool where pH drifted to 7.8 on Tuesday afternoon, that is caught and corrected Tuesday evening with a small muriatic acid dose, never reaches the accumulation level that requires a corrective shock by Friday. The 2-minute correction on Wednesday morning prevents the Friday shock. Without the daily test, the pH drift that the borax system slowed down but did not prevent completely goes uncorrected for days. The accumulation still happens, just more slowly than before the buffer. The shock is still needed, just less urgently than before. 1 with the daily test. The drift is caught when it is a 2-minute correction rather than a 3-hour recovery, and the shock event it would have produced never materializes. 2 minutes every morning, free chlorine and pH, strip in the water, read in natural light, note the results. Free chlorine below 2 ppm, bleach at dusk, pH above 7.6, muriatic acid at dusk, both in range, nothing to do. 1. This habit costs nothing, takes 2 minutes, and combined with the borax buffer is what converts the pool from one that needs weekly shocking to one that needs corrective intervention only after genuinely heavy demand. What happens to shock when you switch from trichlor tablets to bleach? This is the chemistry change that produces the most dramatic improvement in shock frequency for tablet-dependent pool owners, and it works synergistically with the borax system in a way that amplifies the benefit of both. Trichlor tablets do 3 things simultaneously: add chlorine, add CYA, and lower pH. 1. The pH-lowering effect of tablets is a stabilizing influence in some ways. It counteracts the aeration-driven pH rise that the borax system is also addressing. But the CYA buildup effect of tablets is what ultimately defeats the entire maintenance program by late summer. At 80 to 90 ppm CYA, chlorine is so locked up that no amount of shock produces lasting results. The shock dose is consumed without accomplishing the full oxidation it was intended to achieve. Combined chlorine remains elevated, and the pool needs shocking again within days. 1. Switching to plain unscented bleach as the primary chlorine source eliminates the CYA buildup entirely. Bleach adds sodium hypochlorite and water to your pool. Nothing else. CYA stays at whatever level it was set to at the start of the season and does not climb through summer. With CYA stable at 30 to 50 ppm and pH stabilized by the borax buffer, the bleach you add at dusk enters water where it can work at full effectiveness. Organic compounds get oxidized efficiently. Combined chlorine does not accumulate at the rate it does in a tablet-fed pH-drifting high CYA pool. 1. The combination of bleach as primary sanitizer plus borax as pH buffer plus daily morning testing produces this specific result the title of this video describes, not because any one of these elements is a shock elimination program, because together they address the 3 root causes of unnecessary shocking, CYA accumulation, pH drift, and uncorrected chemistry simultaneously. Remove all 3 causes and the shock event that they were producing becomes rare instead of weekly. The maintenance schedule that keeps the system running all season. Once established, the borax system requires minimal ongoing attention. Here is exactly what the maintenance schedule looks like daily in July and August. 2-minute morning test. Free chlorine and pH note corrections needed. Add bleach at dusk based on morning result. Add muriatic acid at dusk if pH was above 7.6. Nothing else on a typical day. Weekly, full 5-number panel. Free chlorine, pH total alkalinity, CYA, calcium hardness. Correct alkalinity with baking soda if it has drifted below 90 ppm. Correct pH after alkalinity is stable. 1 note any CYA movement on bleach as primary source, it should hold steady. Brush pool surfaces for 3 minutes. Empty baskets. Check filter pressure. Shock at dusk if the week included 3 or more heavy use days, or if combined chlorine tested above 0.5 ppm. Monthly test CYA with drop test kit. Test borate level with borate strip. If borates are below 30 ppm, add 5 to 8 pounds of borax per 10,000 gallons, broadcast with pump running. Correct pH afterward. If borates are still between 30 and 50 ppm, leave them alone. 1. Mid-season. Cartridge filter. Soak in diluted filter cleaner if cartridge filter has been running since opening. Oil fouling from sunscreen accumulates in the pleats and restricts flow in ways that hose cleaning does not clear. A mid-season soak restores filtration capacity and improves water clarity in ways that no chemistry adjustment can replicate because the problem is physical, not chemical. Season opening. Establish borates fresh if this is the first season or if a winter drain removed most of the borate level. Full baseline test of all 5 numbers, alkalinity to 100 to 110 ppm first. 1 CYA to 30 to 50 ppm. Borax at 20 pounds per 10,000 gallons. pH corrected to 7.4 to 7.6 after all additions are complete and stable. The realistic shock schedule for a pool running the complete system. Here is what shock frequency looks like for a pool running borax daily testing, bleach as primary chlorine, and correct alkalinity compared to the typical reactive pool store approach. Reactive approach without the system, shocking every 7 to 10 days to address accumulated combined chlorine plus 1 to 3 emergency shocks per season for cloudy water or visible algae. 1 total shock events per season, 8 to 15. Total shock product cost at $8 to $12 per bag, $64 to $180 per season. System approach with borax, bleach, and daily testing. Deliberate dusk shock after heavy use events, parties, high-traffic weekends approximately 4 to 6 times per season. 1 slam if a neglect event occurs, which becomes less likely with daily testing. Total shock events per season, 4 to 8, mostly planned rather than reactive. Total shock product cost using bleach at $4 per jug, $16 to $32 per season. 1. The reduction in shock frequency, approximately 50 to 60% for most pools. The reduction in shock product cost, approximately 75 to 85% because bleach is significantly cheaper per unit of active chlorine than packaged shock bags. Both reductions are realistic based on the mechanism described in this video. Neither is a guarantee. Pool size, local climate, bather load patterns, and maintenance consistency all affect actual results. What the savings represent over 10 years at conservative estimates: $500 to $1,500 in shock product alone. One more meaningful than the dollar amount is the time and inconvenience saved from reactive shocking cycles. The Friday evening shock because the pool always looks bad by the end of the week, the emergency treatment when guests arrive and the water is not right, the service tech call when the shock does not seem to be working because the CYA has climbed too high for shock doses to be effective. The honest answer to the title, what borax actually eliminates and what it reduces. The title says you will never shock your pool again. The honest version is more accurate and more useful. 1. Here is what correctly applied borax, combined with a complete system, actually produces. It eliminates reactive shocking from accumulated combined chlorine for most pools most weeks. This is the shocking cycle that most owners experience as normal, but which is actually a symptom of pH instability and poor chlorine efficiency. Fix the root conditions, and this category of shocking disappears almost entirely. It eliminates the emergency shock from sudden chlorine crashes driven by pH drifting above 8.0. The buffer that holds pH in range prevents the crash that requires the emergency response. It eliminates the pre-weekend precautionary shock that is essentially an admission that the chemistry has not been managed well enough during the week. Daily testing with the morning habit eliminates the need for this kind of insurance shocking. What it does not eliminate, post-party shocking for genuine heavy bather load events. This is correct maintenance regardless of chemistry stability and should be done deliberately after any significant bather load day. 1. The difference is that it is planned, correctly timed at dusk, and sized appropriately, not a panic response to visible water quality deterioration. It does not eliminate shocking during a slam for a pool that has gone green from neglect. It does not eliminate the corrective shock needed when combined chlorine is genuinely elevated from a period of chemistry mismanagement, and it does not eliminate the need for careful chlorine monitoring and bleach additions during periods of sustained heat and heavy use. 1. The complete honest answer to the title: borax eliminates the unnecessary shock treatments that account for the majority of what most pool owners are buying shock for. It does not eliminate every shock situation, but most pool owners who implement this system correctly find that the shock bucket they bought at the start of the season is still more than half full at the end of it. That is the realistic version of never shocking your pool again, and for most owners it is close enough to the promise to be worth the $4 box and the afternoon of setup. 1. The pattern underneath the shock cycle and why it ends here. Every unnecessary shock treatment you have ever bought traces back to this same chain of events. pH climbed through the afternoon unchecked, chlorine became partially or mostly inactive in the high pH water, organic load accumulated instead of being oxidized, combined chlorine formed, the pool needed a large corrective dose to burn it off and restore active chlorine to working levels. Borax breaks that chain at the first link by slowing the pH climb that initiates everything else. 1. Daily testing with the morning habit catches the days when the buffer did not fully hold. Bleach as primary chlorine source prevents CYA from climbing to the level where shock loses its effectiveness entirely. Correct alkalinity provides the foundation the borate buffer needs to work consistently. Remove the pH drift that initiates combined chlorine accumulation, and the shocking cycle that accumulated combined chlorine requires stops running on its own, not through a stronger chemical or a more aggressive treatment. 1. Through a $4 box from the laundry aisle that has been sitting 2 miles from your pool all summer while you were driving to the pool store for another bag of shock. The box is still there. The pool store receipt does not have to be. If this is the summer the shock cycle ends for your pool, drop it in the comments. What was your shock frequency before and what did it drop to after implementing the system? That result documented honestly is what helps the next owner decide before they buy another season's worth of shock bags they should not need. Every video on this channel works the same way. Wrong real numbers. No sponsors. No pool store upsell. If that is useful to you, subscribe. This channel reads the water, not the marketing.